Hey there, I'm Sully, and as always, welcome to the Gun Club. Alrighty, got a few things for us this evening. We're sort of swapped off. We had been doing the weekly updates on Tuesday nights, but we did a special on Monday to sort of dodge Halloween. So we're doing the weekly update on the Thursday this week. We're doing a live stream. We're up on live streaming on Rumble and on YouTube, hopefully showing up both on both the chats. We're sort of monitoring them right now. If you can hear us, give us a thumbs up on the Rumble or the thumbs up on the YouTube stream. We're watching those. Um, had a well, first I'll start with a little piece of housekeeping. I had somebody hit me up on Twitter the other day. It's somebody I've known for a while, and they were sort of saying, it was kind of interesting that I was doing a firearms podcast and talking about firearms and using shotguns and different things and different loads to put different types of food on the table and that type of thing. And they said, you're doing it all with a big, PETA sticker, a PETA sign in the background. And I hadn't even really realized, but up on the noteboard behind me there was actually a big PETA bumper sticker. And well, the one thing is, if you didn't look real closely and you couldn't see, yes, this was the actual sticker that was back there and it says PETA. But if you look a little bit closer, it stands for People Eating Tasty Animals. I actually got this from a beef jerky outfit I bought a bunch of stuff from. So they're like, yeah, you're talking about all this stuff with a PETA sign. Yeah, not the PETA you were thinking of. That's People Eating Tasty Animals. Yes, definitely carnivore, omnivore around this house by all stretch of the imagination. Nothing against people. You want to be vegetarian, you want to be vegan, that's fine. I promise you, any animals that are trying to eat the, roughage that you'd prefer to eat, I'll do my best to consume them, and you can have the roughage. More steaks for me. I'm good with that. As you know, we had a couple of back-to-backs with the whole fiasco up in Maine, and well, that's sort of in a holding pattern now. There's still lots of investigation and lots of follow-up being done on that. I'm watching it and going to see if anything else interesting comes out in the other big news or big developments in those cases, in that case. But I'm going to move on to a couple of other little things. First thing I wanted to do is I wanted to, get back into some of the legal stuff we've talked about. And as you know, I try to follow different legal things going on around the country, different legal cases, different legal updates. And it's hard. Like I said, it's been a fire hose. If you just look at some of the federal court decisions going back and forth between the district court, the courts of appeals, and a few things that may be going up to SCOTUS. And then if you get into the individual state courts, I mean, honestly, just what's going on in the state court of California can keep you tied up for a month because, well, the powers that be out there have been kind of ridiculous. But I had a case come across my desk the other day and I caught wind of it and I thought it was really, really interesting. And this case is actually in the state of Colorado. And Colorado, as you know, at one point, might have been a very pro-gun state, but they've gotten a little bit bluer and a little bit more gun restrictive over the past few years and started worrying about things like, firearms and started trying to vilify the gun community more or less, just to put it bluntly. But this one is the case of Garcia versus Polis or Polis or, well, whatever we're going to call the idiot's name, but it's Garcia versus the idiot. How about that? Or Garcia versus the Putz, I don't care. But it's in Colorado, and this is challenging a law that was passed and signed into effect in April of 2023, putting in a 3-day waiting period for firearms purchases. It was under HB 23-1219, and the simplest version is this requires a 3-day waiting period to take possession of a firearm you purchase, even after you've passed either a Colorado Bureau of Investigation, FBI check, everything else. You've passed all the legal requirements whatsoever to own a firearm, but you got to wait 72 hours, well, because we said so. And, I'm not a big fan on gun laws that are laws for the sake of having a law, laws that'll serve little, if any, purpose. And I looked through a lot of the documentation on the case, and Waiting period laws have never been a big fan of mine, never been a big thing. And the reason is, quite frankly, is number one, a lot of the waiting period laws, well, they don't do anything. They're nothing but a nuisance, more or less. Now, you can go out and you can buy a chainsaw today and take it home today. You can go buy a car today and take it home today. You can go out, buy a gas can or a glass bottle. You can go buy gasoline, take it home today. You can go and buy a whole set of big kitchen knives and take it home today. You can even buy those kitchen knives through the mail. You can go on, not going to name it, but some big online shopping thing, and you can buy, kitchen cutlery that's 12 inches long, nice big serrated sharp edges on it. Take it home today. Probably go out and buy a bow and arrow and take it home today. But guns are different. Are they though? Now, at first you say, well, it's a 3 day, it's a cooling off period. Okay, let's try to believe this. And again, I know the case is being challenged largely on the Bruen statute as far as there's nothing, consistent with the text, history, and tradition of our Constitution that has had a 3 day waiting period before. And so therefore the constitutional side of it doesn't really fit. And I get that. But let's go with the logic of it for a minute. We know that most of our mass shooters plan these events extensively. You'll be hard pressed to find a mass shooter who went out and bought a gun within 2 or 3 days of the event. It just doesn't happen. We see these people who plan stuff months in advance, sometimes years in advance. Some of the most notorious ones have manifestos that are written. This is their sentinel event. This is the biggest thing in their life. They're planning on going out in the amazing blaze of glory and hail of police bullets, or taking themselves out, or blowing something up and going out with it. So a 3 day waiting period is really, well, second to useless. Now, on the other side of that coin, let's look at the fact of, well, they say, well, maybe suicides. Well, maybe it'll help with suicides. Okay. If it's going to help with suicides, if somebody is at the point that they are willing to take their own life, if someone has come to that end point, personally, I hope they do get help. But if they get all the way to the point of going out, buying a gun, do we really think telling them, wait 3 days, it'll get better? Maybe it will. And, I hope in the case that it happens that it would work, but it doesn't necessarily really play out a lot of times. I cannot think of a time that this has been something that has been resolved in a 3 day cycle. Now, maybe, again, you can come up with, well, this time it will, or this time, I don't see it. I see them just using another method. What's that? I can't get the gun and take it home and do it right now? Okay, fine. So on the way home, they drive into a tree or jump off a bridge or run out in front of a train. People who get to that point, a lot of times, they use a firearm that they already have, or they use the method they already have. They don't decide to get in the car and go and spend money and buy a gun to go do it. So again, I think there's a logical fallacy here, and it's one of the great logic fallacies with a lot of gun control. We see politically minded individuals who try to come up with something, and we think it'll do some good, but they haven't lived in the real world enough to know if it will or not. And this case is challenging that 3 day waiting period on the constitutional grounds, which again, based on the Bruen standard, the text, history, tradition, it doesn't fit. Also interesting on this one, and I go a little further with it, it includes private sales from person to person. It does exempt family members at least, but it includes private sales. So if somebody wants to buy a gun that they see online, or a friend of theirs is selling a gun, or their buddy at the hunt club is selling a gun because he needs some money, well, we got to wait 3 days. So we got to either have someone hold the money or hold the gun to figure out how we're going to get this transfer done. Furthermore, and this is the really weird part, it does not exempt current Colorado CWP holders or current firearms owners. So if Joe Smith has a closet full of firearms or a gun safe full of firearms and sees a deal at the sporting goods store that he wants to partake of, he has to go through a 3 day waiting period. if it's going to prevent anything, he's got plenty of firepower at home. Again, if they put this into effect, and it's going to have some great, maybe if they weren't already a CWP holder, hadn't already undergone training and background checks and everything else, maybe then I could live with it a little bit better. But, unfortunately, it doesn't. Now, the plaintiff in this case, or the person challenging the case, I put her information there. Her name is Alicia Garcia, and she is a firearms instructor in Colorado. And that's where this case, to me, is really kind of interesting. She's challenging it with the help from mountainstatelegal.org down on the bottom there, and you can get some more information on it. But the part about this where it becomes so interesting is Ms. Garcia, she is a firearms instructor, apparently quite accomplished. So she does firearms instructor. This is not something that really is going to affect her that directly. She's pretty much got a whole closet full of firearms, or so I would assume. Most instructors tend to have a couple. On the other side of that coin, somebody who is an instructor, who deals with firearms, who deals with the public, who teaches this stuff, can look at a law like this, much like I, as a firearms instructor, look at a law like this and say, what idiot wrote this and why are they doing it? At least to me, I sit there and say, I worked EMS. I worked EMS for over 25 years. I have not seen anybody with a 3-day waiting period anywhere discouraged over doing something. In North Carolina, where I used to work, they had about 5 to 7 day waiting period based on how holidays and business days fell. Believe me, we had plenty of firearm suicides there. It didn't discourage anyone. And if they were that gung-ho to do it, that they couldn't wait the 5 days to get something, guess what? They found another way to do it. If they were that, psyched up that they wanted to go murder a cheating spouse or go do something, guess what? They found another way to do it. So, again, while great intentions, and I'm not trying to make fun of the people who passed it, I think they are trying to do something right. But then you end up with Ms. Garcia, who knows a lot more about the firearms world and about how the real world works, because she is out here on the boots on the ground, and she can show you the fallacies of it. Now, beyond that, the interesting part is, where is the negative effect of this law? We talk about it. For every good, there's always an equal and opposite bad in a lot of these laws. And I know in North Carolina, when we had waiting periods, one of the groups that was most dramatically affected was specifically domestic violence survivors and females. She gets out of a bad relationship with a psycho. He is making threats. He is calling. He is blowing up a phone. He's emailing. He's showing up at her house, at her job. He's following her, whatever the case may be. And she's scared. And she calls the cops. And you know what? We can get a restraining order or a TRO and this, that, and the other. And I got news for you. There ain't a judge's signature on a TRO out there that's going to stop a bullet. And we can get her all the restraining orders and protective orders and all that stuff in the world. But she cannot rely on law enforcement to ride around on her shoulder 24/7, 365. Especially if it was my big old butt, because you know what? If I'm riding around on her shoulder, I'd probably crush the poor thing. But I saw plenty of people when we were working up there that were scared, legitimately scared, terrified. And even as law enforcement, we're sitting there saying, boy, if that was my kid, or if that was my daughter, if that was my sister, the first thing I'd be telling her is lock and load, get a gun. If he's threatening to come to your house, if he showed up at your house, if he showed up at your job, if you walk out to the car at night after work and he's sitting in the parking lot watching you, you need to be strapped. It's that simple. You need to be able to protect yourself. I'd love to be able to follow you around 24 hours a day in a little Crown Vic. We had Crown Vics at the time. Might have dated myself a little bit there, but okay. I'd love to be able to do that. I can't. My radio calls, my system was kept me pretty much hopping all night. But newsflash, we want people to be able to protect and defend themselves. Now, For the woman who's running away from a domestic violence, from an abusive situation, from a problem situation, who wants to go out and get training and everything else, she can't get her gun for 3 days. And like I said, up in North Carolina, it was longer than that. So 3 days is not as bad as it could be. This isn't the end of the world. But what is it? It's a second trip to the gun store. It's more gas expense. It's 2 or 3 nights that, well, if he shows up in the middle of the night, you better hope we can get there. But then again, if he knows where they work, might have a key to the house, what do we do? You know, I got news for you. If the idiot boy has a key to the house, and again, we'll go to the other side. We'll make it a man who leaves a crazy fiance, and she's talking and she's following him and she's doing all this, that, and the other. Well, guess what? If she decides to show up at his house and go Stephen King with the cutlery drawer at O'Dark 100, you hope it's not in the first 3 days. You know, and chances are it's going to take a couple of days to get her to the point that she's ready to go buy a gun. So she, you know, the ex-spouse who gets left or goes psycho, they've got, you know, maybe 5 to 7 days that by the government, that person is rendered defenseless, as opposed to going in, training, and getting it. You know, that is one thing I have to say I support, you know, people being able to get defense quickly. You can go buy a fire extinguisher today. You can go buy anything you need today. Why are we treating firearms so differently? Because maybe it'll prevent something. Honestly, when you look at the calls, and again, when we look through some of our good guy with a gun cases we have here, some of the good girl with a gun cases we've had, folks, you know, one more time. So I've got to take hats off to both Mountain States Legal Foundation, who is helping support and doing this, but also to Ms. Garcia, who's leading the charge. And I wish, and I will say this, and this goes not only to Colorado and, you know, Polis or Polish or whatever the name is. I wish that some of these organizations, if they were going to do this, would look at who new gun owners are, who's out there buying their first gun. A lot of times it's people who are scared. I understand that they get a lot of push from the anti-gun side about guns being big and bad and everything else. But in the case of, you know, someone in a DV situation or somebody who's being stalked, and again, it can go either way. It can be the crazy boyfriend or the crazy girlfriend showing up, following someone around, doing this, doing it. Guess what? They know where you work. They know where you live. Yeah. And the really sad part is you go out, get a restraining order. Well, if she has left him and has moved to an undisclosed location, and then she's going to get a restraining order because he's calling her at work. In order to get a restraining order, we have to tell him where he can't go, which means that she has to put down her new residence on a piece of paper and provide it to him. At the same time as we're telling her, oh, don't worry, you can get a gun in a few days. Your safety shouldn't wait on 3 days. Your safety shouldn't wait on 5 days. You know, personally, I think one thing we need to do, and I said this before, and I mentioned it in our, I think it was a Girls and Guns clip when we were talking about some of my friends, colleagues who are female firearms instructors who work with DV survivors. I think in the case, and again, either gender, back and forth, if it's a DV situation, I think we need the states to be able to expedite these people's carry permits. I think, you know what, if the local sheriff, so again, South Carolina, you take a class locally from independent instructors, you submit this to the state, and they issue your permit. I would love to see in the state of South Carolina where if you've got a letter attached to that application from the local sheriff, you've done your class, you've done all your legals, as long as you pass your background, I think they should expedite it, FedEx you that permit, because that way you can start protecting yourself. We need to make it easier for people to protect themselves. I'm not going to go all down the political route. Face it, there's not a jurisdiction right now that law enforcement is not stretched to the max. We know all about defunding and retiring and all that stuff. And the bottom line is, If you've got 15 patrol cars worth of calls and 10 cars on the road tonight, 5 people are fending for themselves until we can break someone free or get mutual aid from another municipality. I've seen it happen more than once. So, again, from that standpoint, hats off to her for leading the charge and Mountain State Legal taking the case. And again, this is something that really, as a firearms instructor, it's not going to affect her that much, but she's doing something to try to take this out to help out people in her community, people in her state to be able to be safer and protect themselves. So, and again, one more time proving that this young lady who's a firearms instructor probably knows more about the real world than the entire political class up at the wonderful state of Colorado. Sorry, folks, had to call you on it. Okay, now let's move on to another one here. We've got an incident report out of Tampa, Florida. Now, this one's kind of interesting. It happened on the night of the 29th or early the morning of the 29th down in Ybor City or Ybor City. I don't know how to pronounce it. Someone can correct me in the chat if you want. There was a gunfire breaks out outside the nightclub area. Unfortunately, 2 individuals were found deceased on the scene. One was 14 and one was, they say, 20 or 22. I've got news articles, both that have many times. We're thinking he was 20. We're not sure, possibly 22. 16 other individuals were injured in this incident. So 2 dead, 16 injured. Now, I'm not starting on why a 14-year-old was in a nightclub district at 3 o'clock in the morning. That would make way too much sense. We're going to go further and then we'll backpedal on that. Just remember that one. 14-year-old out clubbing at 3 a.m. Who'd have thunk it? They did find 2 handguns on the scene, one of which was determined to be stolen. Imagine that. Well, I guess if you can't get a gun through legal means, there's plenty of guns floating around there stolen. Didn't we talk about that last week as far as where these guns come from? Only like 10% or less than 10% come from legal transactions. 43 to 55% were black market and stolen. Yeah, that was an FBI statistic. So now the incident began as a quote unquote disturbance between 2 groups. Now it came out as, oh, it's an active shooter. Now, when you look at it, this was everything but an active shooter. What do you call 2 groups of youths that are out in the nightclub district that get into a argument that leads to gunfire? I believe the word is gang. I'm sorry. Maybe that's being bad. Maybe that's being a big meanie. I don't know. You call me on that one. Now, this gets a little bit sadder. And when I say sadder and stupider. One suspect is in custody. He's a 22-year-old male, and they're looking for at least 2 other shooters. Now, in good news, there's a lot of video. People are sending tips. There's a lot of video outside the clubs there. Apparently, it's a pretty active district. A lot of places have outdoor surveillance, that type of thing. So they have a good chance of, making their cases on these guys, which is good. Because, 2 people died. A 14-year-old was out there clubbing. He died, unfortunately. I just realized he was 2/3 the age he needed to be in a club. Apparently, he's got some real positive influences in life. We won't go there. Now, to bring this all back. Yeah. The 14-year-old child, there I said it, had a gun, but it was still in the holster. So not only did you have a 14-year-old out there running around at 3 o'clock in the morning in the nightclub district, said 14-year-old was strapped with a gun in a holster. Why? I don't know. I'm as pro 2A as anyone in the world. But why you've got a 14-year-old out running the streets in downtown at 3 o'clock in the morning, packing heat? Come on, man. Now, this can come out as, oh, it was gun violence. A 14-year-old was gunned down. The 22-year-old who's been arrested has made statements to law enforcement stating that, and I quote, he was in fear of his life because the 14-year-old was going for his gun. When you've got a 14-year-old and a 22-year-old running the streets at night with guns, and I'm willing to bet there wasn't too many of them that were bought legally, unless we've got 14-year-olds who are buying guns. How would that happen? Now, would that happen in a normal setting, or would that be part of that 50 to 60% of street guns, stolen guns, whatever else? Maybe he got it from some of his friends. Now, the 14-year-old's family has stated, and I'm going to give them a little bit of grace, maybe, they say, well, he wasn't in a gang, but he had a group of older boys in the neighborhood that he hung out with. He wasn't in a gang. If your 14-year-old is out on the streets at 3 o'clock in the morning in the nightclub district with a gun, I hate to break it to you, your 14-year-old was in a gang. And denial ain't just a river in Egypt, okay? Okay, I'm being told now in the chat it is Ebor, just like Eeyore. Yeah, this is about as sad as Eeyore. I mean, and I'm not trying to be, mean to the parents or the family members who lost a 14-year-old kid. Personally, to me, it's sad as hell that we had a 14-year-old get gunned down. But it's even sadder that that 14-year-old was living a life where he was out there. What? If the 22-year-old hadn't shot him, would he have been able to get to the gun and shoot the 22-year-old? Would we have a 14-year-old going for second-degree murder instead of a 22-year-old? And this is not a gun problem. This is society's problem. We go back to the case we had a couple of weeks ago up at Morgan State University. They've now got the two in custody, a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old in custody for 5 people shot at Morgan State University. Yes, there was a whole bunch of gunfire in HBCU. And I'm sorry to break it to the powers that be in D.C. or the FBI or Merrick Garland or anyone else. It wasn't domestic violence extremists. It wasn't white nationalists. It wasn't the Klan or nothing else. No, it was a 17 and an 18-year-old, one of whom didn't even belong at the school or go to the school. He was, and I quote, up from D.C. for some reason. Now, whether he was up from D.C. to see an old friend, to tour the campus during homecoming, apparently he brought a loaded gun with him. Maybe he was up there trying to sell something. Maybe they were up there trying to buy something. Who knows what some kid from D.C. would buy and sell on the campus of a college up in Baltimore. Now, I used to drive through that area, and, that area was never like that in those days. I mean, it was never a great area, but when you think of a college campus having a gunfight go down on the college campus with a 17 and an 18-year-old shooting it up, and neither one of them goes to the school, I wonder who was on whose turf, maybe? I don't know. But there you've got a college campus getting shot up during homecoming week because some kid from D.C., 17 and 18, are up running around with guns. Now, let's go back to Miss Garcia's lawsuit over the fighting about the 3-day waiting period. I want to ask you, does anyone here in the chat, please tell me if you think I'm nuts or, well, we know I'm a little nuts and well caffeinated tonight, if you hadn't noticed. Does anyone think either one of those individuals went through channels, went through a waiting period, filled out a 4473, did a next check to get their handguns? Probably not. Does anybody think that, these kids, the 14-year-old down there at Ybor City or Ybor City? Yeah, Ybor City. Okay, Ybor. I'm trying here, folks. Does anyone think that they went through channels to get their stuff? Or do we think they did what? They're just out there, doing their thing? Folks, you get to a point after a while, you've just kind of got to wonder how far we're going into crazy. Because we're going to put, and again, the powers that be in the legislature are putting more and more rules and regs on law-abiding citizens. And they're telling Ms. Garcia how she can or cannot purchase a firearm when she is a qualified instructor, when she has firearms. We're going to put rules on people like that. We have to put rules on what I've got to go through to purchase a firearm. Meanwhile, we've got this stupid crap running around on the streets. I've said it before and I've said it again. I got a survey the other day asking what I thought about gun control. And I said, it all depends. Someone says, do you think this country needs more gun control? And I say, that depends. Are we going to try more gun control on law-abiding citizens, or are we going to try more gun control on these crazy kids? You look at this, it fits the formula. A 14-year-old running around with a gun. A 20-year-old shot. A 22-year-old doing the killing. At least 22-year-olds old enough to be carrying. So, yeah. And they're trying to find the other shooters. And I'm willing to bet that the other shooters didn't hang out. And the reason they didn't hang out is because they're probably not legal carriers. Probably either too young or stolen guns. Yeah. If I'm involved in the shooting, I can feel pretty comfortable that if, the sheriff's department runs the serial number on what I'm carrying, it's legit. It ain't either filed off, altered, or stolen. Yeah, you can guess where they're getting their guns. So all the gun purchase laws in the world, they're whistling Dixie down to the graveyard because it's not doing any good. And it is what it is. Now, got another one for us. This was out of Glenwood Springs. Now, fortunately, this one did not result in a incident, but there was an armed subject who was found deceased in an amusement park in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. This actually happened Saturday morning. The individual was found by a staff member in the women's restroom before the park opened. So he wasn't there when they cleaned up Friday night. He was there Saturday morning. They're checking the place before they open up. Staff member goes to check the ladies' room, make sure it's clean. It's got plenty of toilet paper and no one's pooped on the wall. And you got a dead guy. Suspect is wearing all black with body armor, Kevlar helmet, has military law enforcement insignias on it. Could be one of us. No, not really. The suspect had a semi-auto rifle and a semi-auto handgun and several magazines of ammo for both of them. Okay. Well, at least he was loaded up well. He both firearms could be described as ghost guns. And, we've talked on the channel about ghost guns. If you have a question about that, if you want to know what a ghost gun is and you want me to go down that rabbit hole, let me know in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to go down that road and explain what a ghost gun is. In fact, God, I could have gone as a ghost gun for Halloween. Note to self, I think I know what I'm doing next year. But anyway, back to this. This kid, and I say kid because he's 20, also had multiple explosive devices. Now, a few of them were inert fake devices, but a lot of them were real IEDs, real pipe bombs. They ended up with multiple agencies, as well as bomb squads and state-level agencies, having to go up there and defuse and detonate multiple devices on scene. What? Now, we can say it's a ghost gun problem. Okay. Let's say that the ghost gun, the semi-auto rifle, and the semi-auto pistol, we took it totally out of the equation. A 20-year-old had a bunch of IEDs. That should be enough right there. Now, this 20-year-old, we dug in a little further. No previous record, not as much as a frickin' traffic ticket. He had worked for Family Dollar. He was currently flipping things on Amazon, doing some kind of Amazon stuff for his older brother. He lived with mother and older brother about 14 miles from the park. And per his family, he dreamed of one day becoming a law enforcement officer. He graduated high school in 2021. He had even taken a couple of college classes as dual enrollment in his junior and senior year of high school. And he had graffiti on the wall of the restroom, and I quote, "I am not a killer. I just wanted to get into the caves." What it means, I do not know. But this gentleman ended up taking his own life prior to any interaction with anyone, prior to any attack, prior to anything. Now, the fact that the 20-year-old lost his life here, and in the last incident we had a 14 and a 20-year-old lose their life, that's sad. However, in some twisted way, I'm thankful that this 20-year-old did this instead of engaging in whatever kind of attack he was going to engage in. I don't know what he was planning. I don't know what he was thinking. I cannot read his mind. I have no idea whatsoever what he wanted to do, why he wanted to do this, or what his plan was. But folks, wow. Now, the interesting thing is, per the local sheriff, and I'm going to quote him directly here, given the preparation, given the amount of weapons and the amount of ordnance that he had, it almost seemed highly likely that he intended to use these against the community. Yeah, I'll buy that. What he was going to do, I don't know. Why he was going to do it, I don't know. I'm hoping they find out more. His mother and older brother have been cooperating with law enforcement. This has blindsided them. They've had a tragedy. Their youngest son and little brother committed suicide. And that in and of itself is tragic. On the other side of that coin, when you consider that this kid had, rounds and rounds of ammunition, IEDs, body armor, ballistic vest, helmets. Again, this is a kid who's not working, not employed, has ghost guns. And, ghost guns are, I think, definitely becoming an interesting situation. I know what the rules are on ghost guns. I know what the laws are on ghost guns. And I don't see that, it to be a problem. I think that his ghost guns, when they research it, it's going to be determined that they were not legal. That's just my opinion, my hunch, with him being 20. Again, if I was to make myself something that was a ghost gun, chances are, as someone who teaches and works on firearms and builds firearms and, tinkers with firearms routinely, it'd be a little bit more believable that I'd have the tools or the wherewithal or the knowledge to build my own something. But for this kid to build his own AR platform rifle, I don't think he did. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally off base. Y'all tell me what you think. 20-year-old, comment in the chat if you want. Do we think a 20-year-old can build his own AR-15 literally from scratch, from an 80% lower? Or do we think there's someone helping him? And then we look at where else have we seen these, weird ghost guns popping up. Now, those of us who play with no firearms, we know the rules on these, but to me, it's just weird. Like I said, maybe next year I do the ghost gun for Halloween. That could be a interesting costume. I don't know. I didn't do anything for Halloween this year. I didn't have many kids here at the house, which would have been interesting, but 20-year-old. Want to get into law enforcement. Worked at the Family Dollar. Currently flipping things at Amazon. I do have one question. The kid who was involved in the shooting down at the Jacksonville Dollar General, he had worked at a Family Dollar too. He was about the same age. Don't know anything about him. Don't know if there's any connection. It's just weird. Within a couple of months of each other. Who knows? And, got a little bit of a palate cleanser here. For those of you all still waiting, I appreciate you staying in. Let's see. What do we see? Eric's Fishing Adventures. Something smells like shit with this situation. Just like me. Yeah. I can't call it MK Ultra, but I will definitely say the more I've read on it, the more this one smells like caca, poop, excrement, shit, fecal matter. We go back, we're still talking the other day. I know some of the instructors in one of the chats, we got talking and say, well, if you're going to explain how this kid who was working at Dollar General and now flipping things on Amazon and could not pay the rent per his older brother, how he got a Ghost AR, a Ghost Glock, helmet, plates, body armor, mags, ammo. I mean, wait a minute. Didn't that kid in Uvalde have like $6,000 worth of Daniel Defense rifles and high dollar mags and high dollar M855 ammo that nobody ever knew where he got? And he was working part time at Wendy's. Yeah, working part time at Wendy's. Doesn't have a driver's license, doesn't have a vehicle. But he's got 2 Daniel Defense ARs that start in at 2K and up. And then he's got a bunch of mags and a bunch of ammo. And that was still when ammo was through the roof. And he was able to get all this, buy all this, and come up with all this. And grandma and grandpa, who he's staying with, had no idea whatsoever that he was doing it. Big boxes of bullets were coming to the house, apparently. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, he acted totally alone, and forget that. And now, yeah, interesting. Like I said, we're on for the palate cleanser here. But no, Eric, I definitely, I think you're onto something. There's too many people with too much good craft stuff that just seems to be a little bit off. This one's out of Palatka, Florida, and now this happened a while back. A homeowner answered a knock at the door to find a man armed with a handgun. Now, the homeowner immediately slams the door, runs to grab his firearm. As he is going to get his firearm, the suspect begins shooting into the home. The homeowner grabs his AR, valiantly returns fire, forces the attacker to retreat. Calls 911. PD stops the guy a little ways up the road. They find the attacker has a wound to his torso. There was a 9mm in the car, but the subject stated that he did not shoot anything. He just carried that gun with him. And he also told law enforcement that the guy had just attacked him for no reason. Well, apparently this guy wasn't the brightest in the world, because law enforcement can usually tell if a gun's been fired recently. Like it was still warm. But we'll go one step further. Crime scene investigators then find multiple cartridges outside the house. Florida DLE Crime Lab connected those, said they were consistent with the tool markings on the firearm that was found in the vehicle. And the suspect has been charged with aggravated assault as well as firing into an occupied dwelling. I think it was a missile into a dwelling or something like that was the technical term of the charge. It's been hypothesized that the incident stemmed from an earlier argument between the men. It doesn't say how they knew each other or where the argument happened. And fortunately, the resident and his family were uninjured. Now, the resident used an AR. The gentleman outside had some flavor of a 9mm. We don't know what it was. When someone asks you why you need an AR was brought into bear, in this case, to defend a man and his family, his wife, his kids, from an idiot who showed up on his front doorstep, pounding on the door with a gun drawn. The other thing is, this AR apparently was, I believe, a .223, based on what FDLE ballistics report said. And when we saw a couple weeks ago or a week ago up in Maine, the minute it happened, a .223 isn't a valid cartridge. It's designed to be a man killer. It's designed totally to end people's lives. And we heard all the crying and hue. But yeah, wait a minute. Here's a .223 used in a self-defense purpose that didn't even kill the guy. He took a round in the torso, retreated. Wise decision. Yeah, if you bring a 9 to an AR fight, retreat. hasty retreat. Trust me, fall back to a position of I ain't out of here. But why do you need that AR? Because this person overpowered and was able to get rid of the bad guy with a gun because he was a good guy with a gun. Now, firing through the door at the bad guy, I guess when the bad guy is firing through the door at you, you fire back. Hey, role justified. But there was a lot of drama with it because, again, it took the ballistics test and everything else coming back to match the casings on the 9 because the gentleman on the outside had insisted all through it that he had never fired a round out of his gun, even though, well, touching the gun, the warmth of it, this odor, yeah, everyone knew it had been recently fired. But no, he never did anything. Well, once they matched the ballistics casings, he's been charged. So again, this was out of June. It just recently came all the way through with the ballistic stuff, and I wanted to bring out the case. I'd seen it a while back, and I just wanted to follow through on it. Now, here's one in Vermont. This one was in South Royalton, Vermont. Homeowner awakened to the sound of his dog barking and a man banging on the door. Homeowner basically said it was the dog, mostly, that woke him up. The dog was going nuts. He retrieved a firearm, and he and his wife both grabbed cell phones. They called the police. I believe he was a real estate agent and she was an attorney, or vice versa. But both professionals are grabbing their cell phones. They're calling the cops. While they're on the phone with the police, the intruder forced his way through the door and then proceeded to threaten the couple. Homeowner fires one shot. The intruder fled the scene and was arrested nearby. Now, what do we have on this one? Well, the intruder has priors. He does live in the area. They say it was possibly just acute intoxication. He may have not known where he was. He was under the influence of a few different things at the time it occurred. And so he may have been trying to break into what he thought was his own house. In this one and in the last one, fortunately, nobody got their birth certificate revoked. Nobody, got their social security number reassigned to someone else. But when you look at this, both of these have a very, very common thread. Homeowners having to take a action at O'Dark 100, that these people, they weren't in the wrong place at the wrong time. They didn't go anywhere. It wasn't, well, he was dressed that way, or he went looking for trouble, or he did this, or he did that. No. Both of these individuals were sitting in their home, which shall be their castle. And what were they doing? Living their lives. This guy was asleep. And we got to, really give lots of big credit to his 2-year-old German Shepherd by the name of Sasha. Sasha, good puppy, Sasha. Good puppy. Yeah, next time Daddy tells you to shut up when you're barking, you don't have to. You're allowed to bark, Sasha. Because really, the only thing that he said that woke him up was Sasha was going nuts. 2-year-old GSD. So again, think about it. And I bring these up because, we talked the other day about defending your castle, defending your home. Now, both these individuals, someone was going out, something was going on. They did the smartest thing they could. They were armed. They're on the phone with law enforcement. And when the individual breached, they offered them some rounds. It is what it is. AR platforms are the best rifles for the everyday person. Love the platform. I definitely do. Became fond of building my own fishing rods. Also, 9mm sidearm never hurts. I agree. Yeah, I'm not dogging the 9 cartridge, Eric, at all. I'm really not. I'm perfectly fond of the 9mm. I know at least one person who was in the chat earlier who has spent a lot of time learning and practicing the 9mm, or practicing with the 9mm with me. The Smith & Wesson Shield Easy. I've used it as a CWP instructor. I've used it for newer shooters, especially those that are not very familiar or don't have a lot of grip strength. It is a great, in my opinion, training wheels gun for someone who's not very familiar. Um, I carried a 9 when I worked on the road. I did not have a problem with it. Didn't ever feel like I was outgunned or outmanned by any stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, that being said, I did a couple of reviews on the channel. I did a review way back on the Smith Wesson folding pistol caliber carbine in 9mm, and that's a really nice, I think, mobile truck gun, home defense gun, camp gun kind of thing to have around. You know, also, I've been looking for some stuff. I'm probably going to be doing a review pretty soon on the PSA Dagger. If you're not familiar with PSA, PSA stands for Palmetto State Armory. Here in the beautiful state of South Carolina, we're blessed enough to have Palmetto State Armory here to meet a lot of our firearms needs. Can't say they meet all of them, but they meet a lot of our firearms needs. They have a pretty sizable retail footprint, and they have started making their own, I'll say Glockish, clone-ish 9mm. I happen to have, somebody was posting, and we're not going to mention who it was. Somebody was posting, hey, look at all the cool PSA deals. And somebody decided to bait me into buying a gun, and it's all her fault, and we'll blame her some other time. But, I went out and bought a Glock or a PSA Dagger, picked it up the other day at lunch, and PSA Dagger. Okay, so you've shot the PSA Dagger, have you, Eric? Let me know what you think of it. I'd love to hear about it. I know that I picked up the Dagger Compact. I didn't get the fancy threaded barrel or the comp barrel or any of that. I got the $285 discount one. Okay. Yep. If you haven't, check out our review we did on the PSA Admiral. It's 1911. It's 45. Definitely up. It's not a Kimber or a Wilson Custom 45, but it is for a 45 though. For a full frame 1911 A1 45, at the price point, you can't beat the way that gun shoots. First time I took it out, that thing was tight on target at 20 yards. And for what it was, I'm like, damn. And it was the first time I've really felt good about a discount 1911. And it was, very nice. But yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of PSA. I've been known to spend a little bit of money there from time to time. But, yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna do a review on the Dagger Compact because, again, I've got like under $300 in it, and for a 9mm, decent feeling gun. Trigger is pretty smooth on the take up. The wall is nice, so I'm looking to take it out to the range. And I see Miss Minnie is in the chat. Yeah, Miss Minnie, you'll probably get to play with the Dagger a little bit and see what you think of it too. So, speaking of Miss Minnie, while we're at it here, got to give her a shout out. If you're not familiar, Miss Minnie is the wonderfully talented individual who makes our beautiful Gun Club tumblers. Now, we've got these. She actually runs a little side business called Southern Sisters Crafty Creations, and she is quite a crafty little lady herself. She does all sorts of cool logo work and tumbler work for us. And so she does other things too. You can check on her Facebook page, all of her crafty stuff and her embroidery and everything else. But, her tumblers and everything else. And I know right now she's actually been working on a bunch of Clemson tumblers. For those people who are Clemson Tiger fans, I know there's got to be at least one or two left in the state, the way the last couple of weeks has gone. But she's been working on doing a bunch of custom work with that. So, she's been having fun with that one. Yeah, Eric says he spends way too much money at PSA. Yeah, I know the feeling, bro. I know the feeling. Although I have to say that Dagger yesterday under 300, I'll take it. Yeah. So yeah, Southern Sisters Crafty Creations. They've got some really cool swag out there. As we build up subscriptions and as things keep going, We're about 217 followers on the Gun Club on Rumble right now. We're about 20 on YouTube. I think when we get to a combined 500, I'm going to raffle some of these tumblers off, and we may even have Miss Minnie do some custom coloring for you on those if you have a special favorite. So, oh well. But that's all I've got running for tonight. Folks, y'all have any questions for me? What's new and different in the world? What do you want to talk about with guns out there? I mean, yes, I took a shot at Clemson. I'm getting yelled at in the chat. Yes, I'm sorry, Minnie. It's okay. Minnie, we love you. You're pretty, okay? Yeah. She doesn't necessarily like when I take my cheap shots at Clemson, and I understand that. But yeah, we go back to our formula. We go back to what we've been seeing in these things. Folks, again, it is what it is. I'm going to go back to one of our earlier screens here and pull up the information for Ms. Garcia. If y'all want to check out her stuff, she's got a web page up. She's also pretty active on Twitter. Her Twitter is at boomstickbabe.com or at boomstickbabe on Twitter. Her website is boomstickbabe.com. And if you can throw a couple of bucks over to the MS Legal, Mountain States Legal Foundation, hopefully if we can get this blocked in Colorado, it'll set a precedent. Maybe we start getting some of these stupid waiting periods. If we can kick a 3-day waiting period's ass, maybe we can get a few other waiting periods taken out. Let's face it, I don't like waiting periods for the simple reason of it denies you your right to defend yourself until the government gets around to it. And if you're having to go out and run to a gun store at, Friday night to purchase something, and they're closing in a couple of hours, and you do it, and it's like, oh, but we've got a waiting period, and you've got to wait till Monday or Tuesday to pick it up. I hope the ex doesn't show up with a kitchen knife over the weekend, because guess what? Your right to defend yourself is what it is. Correct me if I'm wrong. From a Salty Stream. I'm trying to think. Salty Eric, you may have heard from me in let's see, Andrew Legal Mindsets chat, or I'm pretty active in the Arcata community. I follow the Law Pope pretty well. I may have been in one of Sally's streams. I don't think I've done anything with Salty, but I bounce around into different chats all day sometimes when I'm bored. Just trying to come up with who it would be. Like I said, maybe Sally on Twitch, or like I said, Mindset. Sometimes, just depending. Let's see. Haven't finished Clemson yet. Crazy week with your real job. Post. Hey, if you would send me pictures when they're done, we'll post them up there. Yeah, I got to say, one thing is, while it does take Miss Minnie a little bit of time sometimes to get to actually get stuff done, the wonderful part is she actually, when she does it, she takes pride in how she does it and how it looks and how it turns out. She's not just rushing things out to get them done yesterday to, hurry that along. She actually, like I said, takes a great deal of pride in it, and I can show a lot of respect to that. Yeah, she mentioned, Danny. You may have seen me and Danny on stream also. We do a bunch over there. In fact, Minnie was the one who made the beautiful Keep Calm and Danny on Tumblr for Miss Danny. I think the funny thing was when she said that her husband had taken away her tumblers because of the fact he liked them so much. But yeah, Eric, we've actually I made a bunch of stuff. Have you ever gone down to Matsuri, down to Houston? You been in any of those? Let's see here. Put my info up. If you want to find out more about any of our stuff, this is where you find us at. Now, I'll admit I have not been real active on locals as of late. However, hopefully be working on that. Yeah. Miss Minnie actually works for lawyers, but I showed her my favorite lawyer. I gave her a video one day and I queued it up to Nick reading Unbreaded, and I thought I said that there's my favorite lawyer to watch. So it basically was kind of interesting. I watch a lot of Danny, a lot of Mindset, and also I tend to get into the Unbreaded Club with Nick about 12:30 every night. Yeah, poor Minnie works for lawyers, so she has to sort of do her crafting in and among everything else. But you have to admit, she does some beautiful work. Yeah, and if you want more information on some of our videos, I put everything we have on our Rumble library. I don't post everything necessarily onto YouTube. It's just self-preservation. YouTube is not as pro-gun as I am, so it is what it is. But yeah, we got our Miss Minnie. But all right, that's about all I've got for tonight, folks. I appreciate you stopping by. I'm going to go ahead and shut the stream down now. Guys, be smart, be safe, take care of yourselves out there. I mean, we got 14-year-olds running around strapped in Ebor. We've got 20-year-olds with IEDs in Glenville Caverns, Colorado. And it's a little bit nuts. But the funny thing is, it is what it is. It's the world we're living in. And that's why, practice, train, do what you got to do. Be smart, be safe. Bye.